What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Karnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammack. Daniel, we've got week 6. This always happened in college football. Week 6 was a little bit of like a, kind of a gap week before week 7. Some huge results, but week 7, huge week this week. We've got huge rivalry games with stakes, as well as some other big matchups. On this episode, we're going to go through one thing we learned this past weekend. We'll talk about Penn State and Miami. 2 questions we have moving forward. Got a lot of Texas school talk, not just the University of, but some Texas schools, as well as some Florida, Clemson, and Miami in that one. We'll have our XPR update, as well as, Daniel, we're in week 7. We're going to do some updated playoff picks now that we've seen some games. We've got some data. We'll go into 3 games we're watching that we're not picking, 3 uniform matchups to keep your eye on this weekend, and then the 4 best games of the weekend, which was hard to choose this week. But for the 4 best games of the weekend, picks against the spread. Daniel, how you doing? This is a big week. Are you ready to talk about it?
Yeah, man, this is great. We get to just maybe reset our playoff predictions, maybe get rid of our Penn State, Texas takes from the beginning of the year, and just kind of, start anew, and just kind of wring our hands of it. How about that?
It's always great to bring up the stuff you were right about and then kind of ignore the stuff you're wrong about.
Absolutely.
Here's the thing. Penn State, I'll say I was very right about, but I also had them in my playoff at 10-2. And we'll get to Penn State. We're going to talk about them. You know what? Let's just dive in, Daniel.
Let's do it.
This is a big week. First quarter of our show is one thing we learned. Daniel, what's one thing you learned after watching games this weekend?
Jacob, one thing I learned, Miami is different, at least so far.
Yeah.
They, Jacob, they're on our, maybe our best segment that we do yearly is the Who's Back segment. We do that every offseason. And
they're shooting up.
Miami on trajectory. And, people always talk about, is the U back? Is Miami back? And it's like, well, dude, They have the furthest way to go to be back because they've won 5 national championships with 5 different head coaches. And they're just they're so good, and they always have NFL talent. And for so long now, it has not looked like that. And this year, I think a lot of people were expecting it to be similar to, last year, where Cam Ward really kind of was a one-man show for Miami and willed them to those 10 wins or 9 wins, whatever it was. I think they ended up kind of folding late. But yeah, because they were all the talk last year, and then it just kind of fell apart. This year, I think that's what we thought Carson Beck may have been coming in to do. And I think several people, you and myself maybe included, were like, hey, maybe Carson's not up to being a one-man show. He's a very good quarterback, great elite processor. How's his arm doing? Because he was coming off the injury. Now he looks good, but there's a lot of questions coming into the season.
Yeah.
None of us had that, they were going to be strong on the offensive and defensive line. They weren't going to be necessarily out-coached in any game so far. I say so far. We'll see. Cristobal has that kind of in his back pocket. We don't know. But, just watching the game Saturday night, Miami completely dominated that game. Florida State, did all they could to just kind of squeak back into it at the end to make it look somewhat respectable. But Miami dominated that offensively and defensively. And Carson Beck played well. He played, he's a good game, but they don't need Carson to be Superman for them to be a elite team this year. And they look pretty complete as a team. And you look at their schedule and you look at, this conference they're in, they don't have to play, the Alabamas of the world. They don't have to play Ohio States of the world. They're going to be able to dominate their opponents week in, week out.
Yeah, their schedule, take a look at it, because we're sitting here in our group chat saying, are they going to lose another game? Not percentage-wise, it's hard to project undefeated, and college football has been crazy this year. But, statistically speaking, they've played the hardest part of their schedule, and they're undefeated. So, to that end, does Cristobal pull a Cristobal this year? Is he over that? But, to your point, Carson Beck doesn't have to be Superman, although he's shown he can be, which I think is what makes them scary. And the defensive line, they might have the best defensive player in the country in Ruben Bain. The secondary I talked about last week being one of the wins of the transfer portal this year, being the Miami back 7 and their secondary. So, yeah, Miami, more to come, XPR on Miami. Daniel, my one thing I learned is changes will be made at Penn State. Not sure when, Not sure what, but changes will be made. I'm not saying James Franklin's going to be fired. I'm not saying, end of the year he's going to leave or retire. I don't know. I'm not saying that won't happen. I do think firing is out of the question because his buyout so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, well, we'll see. I think you're going to see less firings or less lucrative coaching contracts moving forward with players getting paid, because it's not just buyout money and new coach money you're having to pay. That is now taking away from NIL and rev share and like paying your players. So rebuilds will take a lot longer if you pay a massive buyout. So what does James Franklin make changes in season this year and turn the season around? They go 10-2. I highly doubt they win at Ohio State, and at this point, I think 9-3 does not get them in the playoff with that schedule. But changes will be made. And here's the tough part if you're a Penn State fan. This is not rock bottom. I know that losing to a winless UCLA seems like rock bottom. It absolutely can get worse. Look at Florida State last year. We kept thinking it can't get any worse than this, and they go from 13-1 ACC champs to 2-10. So if they don't be careful, like, it can get worse this year, in which case then serious conversations start to be had about James Franklin. But regardless, my one thing I learned is changes will be made at Penn State because the way you've done things, again, this was the year. Something I tweeted on Saturday was whenever you get the chance to win a championship, you have to do it because you're never guaranteed to be back. We saw this with like Georgia in 2017. It was like, you know what? They lost in overtime. They're going to be right back in this thing. And then, it took 5 more seasons to get back in that position to win it. They were in a position last year to win it, and everyone's like, no big deal. Everybody's coming back. They'll be right back in it next year. And now they're not. Like, I can confidently say they're not winning a championship this year. You got to do it when you have the chance because nothing's ever guaranteed in this sport. So changes will be made. I know that for sure at Penn State. Our second quarter, Daniel, 2 questions we have moving forward. What you got? What's your first question?
Yeah, looking at our ledger here, I think that we might have some similar questions a little bit, but mine's more, would you rather?
Okay. Do you want an answer to this?
I'm happy. I'd like to hear just kind of a thought. Yeah, of course. Yeah, answer it. But would you rather take the state of Texas or the state of Florida, the schools? Because this comes up a lot in high school recruiting. Texas and Florida are the 2 biggest hotbeds. That's, and then obviously California has always been up there, but, Georgia and some of these other states are rising up. But like, if you ask, 50 people, 49 of them are going to say that Texas or Florida is the best state for high school recruiting. That usually translates to the Texas schools being pretty good, but there's been kind of a dip for several years, and then now there's been a resurgence. So, I mean, just kind of thinking through it, this question kind of posed to me. Obviously, you had the 2 flagship universities playing on Saturday, so that kind of sparked some things with Florida beating Texas, beating them pretty handily in the Swamp. But then just kind of seeing the magnitude of Miami and Florida State. And then at the same time, Houston and Texas Tech were playing, and it made me think, and I was like, oh yeah, Texas A&M is playing Mississippi State right now. And there's a lot of these schools that, you could start to match up with each other, and like UCF, like USF, they're, I guess, no slouch overall. They'll hold their own to a certain extent. And the big 3 in Florida being actually somewhat relevant this year is important. They're all, say what you will about Florida. Obviously they beat Texas, but I stopped short of saying that they're all having pretty good seasons, but Florida is hanging by a thread, but they did just beat the mess out of Texas. So what do you think? Texas versus Florida?
Like, if I'm taking like the average of those, am I saying like who has the better crop of teams? Which state?
Yeah, just take it how you want. That's kind of like...
Yeah. I think still Texas. I think. Like your top 3, like let's go top 3 for top 3. Maybe after that Florida's deeper. I don't know. UCF is okay. USF might make the playoff this year. My wife's alma mater, go Bulls. I mean, the top 3 in Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, all having very good seasons. Florida State beat Bama. We'll see how they finish. Miami's very good. Florida beat Texas. I don't know. Maybe still Texas. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'll ask my related question. It's another Florida and Texas schools. How about this, Daniel? Who's more likely to go undefeated? Texas Tech or Miami? I think statistically, I'll give you a chance to look at their schedules if you'd like. Statistically, these are the two teams that have the highest chance to go undefeated this season into the playoff. Maybe Ohio State is up there just because of how good they are compared to their schedule, but they do play a better crop of teams down the stretch. And I mean, Daniel, I told you last year, until they do it, I'm picking Michigan to beat Ohio State. So please don't let me forget that when I go to pick Ohio State in week 14. Yeah, who's more likely
I don't
to
think you're going to listen
Texas
to
Tech
me.
or Miami?
Yeah, I'm looking.
So I'll tell you, for me, I think it's Texas Tech. Like, I think Miami still plays the way their schedule sets up at the end. They end with 2 road games and then the ACC championship, so all away from home. And while I think they have the best lines of scrimmage in the country, I think the difference in Miami's line of scrimmage and who they play the rest of the way is the gap is not as big as the bodies Texas Tech has on their schedule. Like I think, me included, as a college football community, we need to look at Texas Tech differently because of who they've brought in the portal and who they've recruited as freshmen. Like they are recruiting a different type of player, and they brought in a different type of player at Texas Tech than the rest of the Big 12 has. Skill players are comparable, but those big bodies, no one else in the Big 12 has those big bodies. So I think it's Texas Tech. But
I don't know.
We'll see.
BYU has some guys that, they're all, you got a mortgage and some kids and stuff. So like
they're 28.
Yeah,
good point.
Just tuck that one away. BYU
That's
with
fair.
a quarterback with a non-quarterback number, which is sacrilegious.
God. Yeah, it needs to be in the uniform segment.
Yeah, dude. Like, throw them away all the way. I think the toughest team, if you look at both schedules, the toughest team on either schedule remaining is, I think, Louisville, and that's on Miami's schedule. So, and that's their next opponent. So I could get down with that. They do have a bye week to prepare for Louisville, so we'll see.
But by the way, Miami had bye week, Florida State, bye week, Louisville. And they don't have a bye the rest of the year. I'm interested to see if they run out of gas because of the way their bye set up. It's very, very weird. We'll see. All right, Daniel, second question.
All right. I guess it's time for my other question. Yeah, hold on. I know how the show works. I've been here before.
Yeah.
So my question, all right, this may just be like a little siren song. I saw them win one game, and all of a sudden, am I back in? Can Clemson climb back into national relevance this season? So
no.
Obviously, the 1-3 start, terrible. Okay. That being said, they've got the big win against UNC. Tyler from Spartanburg is just, sending Dabo, a bunch of DMs and just ruining his life. But I look at it, and again, I know normally when you look at a schedule, Jacob, we're looking at it and we're saying, oh, that's an easy win. That's an easy win because it's a good team. I don't know if Clemson's a good team. I know that they just beat the mess out of UNC team that I still don't have any idea. I'm pretty sure they're terrible, but I don't know how bad they are. Like, is this rock bottom? Are they a sideshow? Was this actually a good win? Because they do have some players. Like, I know players on their team, but okay. So walk with me through this. They play Boston College this week. They come home and play SMU. They play Duke at home. They get Florida State at home. Then they go to Louisville, got Furman at home, and they play at South Carolina. I'll say this. South Carolina does not look as good as they did before the season. Do I think that makes it any more winnable for Clemson? No, not necessarily, because that's a rivalry game, and South Carolina won last year, and I think Clemson may have been the better team last year. So, but I'll say this: if they win all of the rest of their games, if they beat Boston College, SMU, Duke, Florida State, who's good, Louisville, who's good on the road, Furman, and then at South Carolina, I don't know, man. I think that they're not going to be an ACC title contender because I think there's too many teams ahead of them. And mathematically, it's just not going to work out for them. It would just take a lot of extra help for that to happen. And they already have the head-to-head loss with Georgia Tech. But I don't know, man. I feel like they could ruin Florida State's run. They could step on Clemson's, season. They could step on Louisville's season. I'm not just meaning by being a spoiler. I think that they can affect what the playoff picture looks like. And we might think of them differently if they go on that kind of a run too. If they end up 9-3 and then go to, I don't know, what bowl, the Belk Bowl, Duke's Mayo Classic.
The thing, Daniel, if because they have 2 conference losses. Number one, I think schedule-wise, I think they're going to be an underdog at Louisville and at South Carolina. So we're asking them to pull 2 upsets. I think they'll be a slight favorite home against Florida State. And I am pulling from our good friend K Ford Ratings, his numbers there. So I've got some smart people backing me up on that. The problem is you've got 2 conference losses. Does Georgia Tech, you need Miami or Georgia Tech you need Miami to lose at least 2. You need Georgia Tech to lose at least 3 to get into the ACC championship. Because I was going to say they could go 9-3 and win the ACC and sneak into the playoff again, just like they did last year. But I think that's less likely this year, just given how the standings will shake up. But I will believe it when I see it. How's that? Again, I think this was good medicine. And again, some teams don't take good medicine. Penn State had a made-ready situation to go to UCLA and work out that loss against Oregon and just, paint the field with their blood and lost outright. So Clemson did take the good Lord's medicine and Bill Belichick's Tar Heels and beat him pretty good. So that's what you need to do. We'll see. I saw on Twitter this week, someone said the funniest thing about the Tyler from Spartanburg whole thing that happened, was that in 2023? I can't remember.
I think so.
Was that Dabo let him finish? That dude talked for, I don't think he just let him finish his whole rant. No one hit the kill button. He just let him finish. That's so funny.
I think he was just so interested in what he was saying. He's like, I'm hanging on his every word.
This is the greatest sport in the world.
He's like, this is brand new to me. Everybody usually loves me. Let me hear this. So,
I mean, dude, just imagine another sport being like, hey, you just came off the field and whatever, play. We've got, Joe Schmo from, rural Georgia. He's got a question for you. And you just let him go on for complaining about the team for 5 minutes. Oh, it's so
It's
funny.
Essentially the Feinbaum show, but it's hosted by the head coach. Like, what?
I mean, dude, imagine, you got, Anthony Edwards coming off the court and they're like, hey man, we've got Daniel from St. Cloud, Minnesota. He's got a question for you. And they're like, what? And you just talk for 5 minutes while he's sitting up there. Dude, no other sports like this one. Daniel, my second question. All right, let's project out to week 14. All right. Austin, Texas. Could Texas versus Texas A&M decide who gets a spot in the college football playoff at the end of the season? I think it might.
It did last year.
And it decided who played for the SEC championship. That game and I think that gets forgotten. That game got watered down because Texas A&M just could not move the ball, so it became a boring game. Texas A&M looks like the better team so far this year, but look, this is a long season. We said this with Alabama week 1. These teams that are deep and talented, at some point things probably will click, and it's a matter of, can they click before it's too late? Texas has 2 losses, not too late for them. Things could click for Texas still this year, and we'll forget the first 4 weeks. Just like people probably are already forgetting that Florida State beat Alabama handedly in week 1 because they look like a completely different team. So that's my question. I'm just kind of looking ahead and going, as we're doing our playoff picks, kind of looking ahead and going, we might have two or 3 lost teams playing in that game, and winner kind of gets a spot there at the, end of the playoff bracket. So that would make that game that is already a fun rivalry game that needs to be moved back to Thanksgiving even more fun this year. So
how much of a nightmare would it be for Texas if Texas Tech and Texas A&M are both in the playoff and they are not? I mean,
again,
that's just like a whole mind situation. That's the flagship program. People that aren't a part of it don't flagship program. You and your community, a Texas fan, Texas A&M and Texas Tech have never been able to say anything to you.
No.
And if they're both in the playoff and you're not, I mean,
again, irrational sport with irrational fans. But dude, there be people calling for Sark's job after they like almost won the SEC in year one and went to the playoff, went to the semis. Yeah. Not saying that's right, but that would happen.
Of course.
Daniels, we get to halftime here. We've got our updated XPR, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see on screen. We've got our beautiful new graphic, which, hey, shout out to Ben Doherty. He's watching us record right now. Ben is doing graphics for us. We're really grateful and appreciative. Met Ben on LinkedIn of all places. So shout out to LinkedIn. He was searching for some other show that, I don't know. I think it's some no-name show, like Josh Pate's college football show, and found ours instead. So grateful that we can oblige. But yeah, so new XPR graphic, as you can see on screen. I'll call it the top 5. And if you're not watching on YouTube, you can get the graphic on at the Extra Point Pod on Instagram, or you can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel, me on Twitter at Jacob Karnes with a K. That top 5: Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, Ole Miss, Oklahoma. Daniel, my question is, man, who's the best team in the country right now? Because I think everybody's got the same top 3, and those are the top 3 that have gotten AP votes for number 1. I put Miami 1 this week in my personal poll, which is like a 5th of the ranking, right? And you've got a 5th of the ranking as well. And then as I'm digging into the games this week, I'm like, which we'll talk about them. Ohio State, I think, has obviously a good argument to being number 1. As of last week, we were both on Oregon being the number 1 team in the country. I think they've all looked the best at different times, and I definitely think that's the top tier. I mean, as of week 7, Daniel, who's the best team in the country?
You and I both ranked Miami number 1. I think there's obviously a recency to it, but that's just because we have the most data as of now. I thought Ohio State did exactly what they're supposed to do with Minnesota. A lot of people would try to like downplay the win. They dominated them. And there was no and Minnesota, I mean, I'm not saying they're a great team, but like they did what they're supposed to do with that
That's
team.
Right. That's what great teams are supposed to do. Yep.
And this isn't like, New Mexico State, like they beat a conference opponent who, albeit overmatched, dominated them. So there's been years past where they play around with a team like that. So Ohio State, I still got respect on their name. Oregon, if you were like, hey, I really need to know who's going to win if I had to pick one of these 3 to make the run, I have more of a feeling about Oregon over the other 2 teams because I think I trust like Dan Lanning with the defense more. I think and then Dante Moore, my preseason Heisman, I'm hanging on to it tightly. But I think that they have maybe the highest ceiling. And so I would probably bet on the highest ceiling in between those 3. But Miami is the newest to this table for me. And I'm trying to reimagine them as not just a playoff contender, but a title contender. And that's my biggest shift this past week. I moved them from a list of playoff contenders to my list of title contenders.
Yeah, I'm with you. Be sure to check that out. And again, our XPR, our extra point ranking, is really a BCS-like ranking. So we, just like the BCS do, we take some of the best computer models, mixed with human polls, in this case, your ranking and my ranking, kind of combine them and create a BCS-like ranking. I still think the BCS is the best way to rank teams. Everybody hated it until it was gone. Now we have a committee of people who look like they've never watched a football game before deciding who the best teams are. That's helpful. So RIP to the BCS. We're going to keep it alive with our XPR. Daniel, we've reached the halfway point of the season-ish. We made a playoff projection preseason. Daniel, we're not going to go all the way to who wins it, but as of today, who's in your top 12? Who's making the playoff now that you've seen teams play? We have data. Who's making the playoff in your eyes? You get a chance to repick, Daniel. Give me your top 12.
All right. So here we go. I've got Miami number 1 because I'm expecting them to finish undefeated.
There you go. You answered the question.
I think they have the easiest question. I think the easiest way to be number 1 is to finish undefeated and to win your conference. So I think that they have that path. Next, I have Ohio State, Alabama number 3. I think right now they're most likely out of the SEC. I also think that there's a chance that one-loss SEC team is above a one-loss Big Ten team. So it just depends on that one. I have Oregon number 4. Since we did the re-rack, now you can have a second conference team. It doesn't have to be a conference champion, of course. So Oregon's number 4 for me. I have Georgia at number 5. I have Ole Miss at number 6. I have Texas Tech at number 7. Florida State at number 8. And that's Florida State, who's going to be in the ACC championship game.
Okay.
For a rematch.
Preseason.
Oklahoma, I have number 9. Georgia Tech, 10. Looking at that schedule, man, I think that they're gonna be able to sneak in the playoff this year. Texas A&M, number 11. And rounding it out with a group of 6, I have Tulane.
Okay. We'll see our overlap here. Daniel, I've got Ohio State at 1. I think if the Big Ten champ is 1 or 0 losses, or the SEC champ, spoiler alert, I don't think the SEC champ's going to have 0-1 loss. So Ohio State at 1. I've got Miami at 2. Oregon at 3. Alabama at 4 of the SEC. So same top 4 as you, just a little bit different order. Got Texas Tech at 5. Georgia at 6. Ole Miss at 7. Indiana at 8. So there's our first difference there. I've got Indiana in there from the Big Ten. Texas A&M at 9. Tennessee at 10. There's our other difference. Oklahoma at 11. USF at 12. Go Bulls. A little bit of bias there. From
how many SEC teams do you have in your
6.
Okay.
And I've got 3 from the Big Ten,
2.
1 from the ACC, 1 from the Big 12, 1 from the Group of 5. So this is, again, people will scream SEC bias from the rooftops. It's just, I mean, the Big Ten, what other team is going to come out at 9-3 or better from the Big Ten? Like, I do have like USC at Michigan kind of projected at that 9-3 range. I just don't think with their schedules, it's going to be able to line up with a 9-3 Texas A&M, Tennessee, Oklahoma, who I all have at 3 losses projected and all in the playoff.
You put 3 Big Ten teams. I only put 2. So,
yeah.
But you did put 1 extra SEC team. I put 5. My issue is, for some reason, I'm validating the ACC, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Miami down the stretch.
I love it. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Let us know on Twitter. Who do you think makes the playoff now that you've seen games? I was going to say, now that we have our XPR and playoff picks, my playoff picks look very similar to our current top 12 minus the group of 6 champ. Let's see. I've got everybody but Mizzou in there. Oh, and there you go. That's the one spot is your group of 6 champ. So I'm like, that's for sure not going to happen. I already feel bad about it. We're not going to have this figured out in week 7. So, yeah, but excited for that to come to fruition. It's a good time to start thinking about it, at least, as we hit the midway point in the season. Daniel, third quarter, big week this week. We're only picking 4 games against the spread. What are 3 more games we need to be watching this weekend as we hit week 7?
Well, you know me, and you know I'm going to pander to my alma mater occasionally. We are going to the game, so I figure Kennesaw State, Louisiana Tech.
Good pick.
In the bank, Fifth Third Bank Stadium.
In the bank.
Yeah, so we're going to be standing on the sideline. If you're watching ESPNU on Thursday night, look out for us. We'll be the handsome gentleman with the credential around our neck and the extra point hats on. But yeah, check us out. That game, Jacob, Kennesaw State's on a winning streak. I don't know if you're aware. So they have found a quarterback. I know you're aware. I'm just putting it out there for listeners. Odom has been a great dual threat quarterback. Looks like, I mean, my biggest concern is that he looks too good and that big team is going to poach him in the transfer portal, which is inevitably going to happen in the offseason. Hopefully that does not happen. Amari Odom stay forever. All that to be said, Louisiana Tech is Kennesaw State toughest game remaining on their schedule. So they can get through this game. I mean, they could have a nice little finish here and maybe go to a pretty good bowl game. First season under Jerry Mack, shout out. Okay, I got my fandom out of the way. How about this? Tennessee hosting Arkansas. Now, Tennessee's a different team than they were last year. Arkansas is a different team, obligatory. Tennessee had to play this game in Fayetteville last year. They get this game at home. I think it's going to be a much different game. I want to see how Tennessee responds in this type of a game. I want to see how they play against the team that they should beat. They obviously had to go to 2 overtimes against Mississippi State. I think this, you put Tennessee in your playoff. I like Tennessee to kind of go on a little bit of a run. They've got Alabama next week. Are they looking ahead or are they able to beat who's in front of them at home? So This will be a big test for a Tennessee team this week. And also, I didn't mention they had a bye week. So did Arkansas, and obviously Arkansas had just fired Sam Pittman. So this is the return of the Bobby Petrino era to Arkansas. You're going to want to watch this game. Mark it down. And then, of course, we're not picking this game. They don't call me Deep South Daniel for nothing. But, dude, the Deep South's oldest rivalry, Georgia and Auburn. It's the 7:30 p.m. ABC game. If you look at our normal picks, I mean, we're pretty regularly have that 7:30 ABC game on our top 4 picks. So the fact that it's not is interesting, but it just, that's Auburn's fault. But it's in Jordan-Hare at night. Should be spooky, as they say. Tough place to play. Georgia's 3.5-point favorite. So got to watch out for that one, but definitely going to be watching it. Jacob, what about your games to watch, your uniform matchups, and if there is any other games I may have missed?
Yeah, okay. One to keep an eye on as we talk about our playoff projections as far as a game. North Texas and USF play Friday night, and North Texas undefeated in the American. I do think the American champ gets in, like that will be the representative. You've got Tulane, USF, North Texas, and Memphis, to me, that are like the contenders for that spot. Again, USF's only lost to Miami, which we've talked about, best team in the country. So I think this is a college football playoff elimination game on Friday night. So I think that's a fun one to watch. 2 really fun offenses, 2 teams that wear green. So keep an eye on that game with Addie's Bulls. All right, Daniel, 3 uniform matchups that should be great this weekend. I'll say one you already said, Deep South Oldest rivalry, Auburn and Georgia. I do think this is the best combo of uniforms is when Georgia plays at Auburn. Only exception, of course, being we've only gotten it one time, but in 2007, the black jerseys against Auburn was great. But Georgia's own uniform against Auburn's home uniform. Look, Auburn, I know that y'all quote unquote change the uniform and like basically put on different face masks for different games as like they're changing the uniform. It's not good. The Navy face mask is perfect with that helmet. Just stop. Just leave that alone. You don't need to wear an orange face mask. They're doing an orange out. I have a feeling it's to be an orange face mask. But the Navy face mask looks the best. Anyway, it's a great uniform matchup. You called out one before we started recording. USC versus Michigan. You knew this one was coming. 2 of the best uniforms in the sport. Daniel, color pants I'm rooting for in this game is actually blue. Again, have no problem with blue pants on the road for Michigan. It's at home that I have a problem with. Because USC wears gold pants, I want the contrast.
That would be nice.
Yeah, I don't want 2 different shades of yellow. That's not as good looking. Although they're separately, they're 2 good uniforms. Not as good for the matchup. So I'm rooting for blue pants. White pants are fine. Lastly, we're going to talk about this game, Red River. Just anytime they play, that's a uniform game. It's just something about the way they look at the Cotton Bowl too, like in the sunlight, which
it's meant to be.
The game's probably going to end at night because we're getting a 3:30. Well, I guess it's Central Time. I was going to say we're getting a 3:30 kick. I do like that game being the noon kick. Something I dislike with a new TV contract. But yeah, man, that one should be such a good uniform matchup in Red River. I think I prefer when Oklahoma's the home team, but I think Texas is wearing orange this year. Have they ever done color v color in that game? Do you know?
I don't remember.
I don't know if that would be better at all. I don't think so, but regardless.
They both look so good on the road too. So both of them have elite road uniforms. So
that's a helmet game, man. So that one should be great. Daniel, 4th quarter, we're going to pick 4 games here against a spread. A lot of big games this weekend. Let's start with a noon game, Ohio State and Illinois. We haven't really talked about Ohio State since week 1. They travel on the road to Illinois, where Illinois was able to beat USC. They're 14.5-point favorites on the road. Ohio State has traveled on the road this year, but, next biggest test on the road, 14.5 points is the spread. Daniel, who do you like in Champaign?
Jacob, I don't know if you're like me and you just can't get the image of Indiana beating the mess out of Illinois out of your head, but I dream about it at night and it wakes me up. I don't know if I can trust this Illinois team that I stood on the table for and I said they're going to bully Indiana. I just simply don't know if I can do that.
I picked them too.
So all that to be 14 and a hook would give me hope if I had any belief that Illinois could do anything in this game. I simply do not believe anymore. It's over. I think Ohio State wins this game. Of course, I've got some recency in this, like I just mentioned with them with Minnesota, where they just, took them to the woodshed. I think that that's similar to this game. I think they jump on them early and often. There's just too many good players on this team, and I think it's similar, Jacob, to 2021 and 2022 for Georgia, where Georgia wins, and then a lot of people were like, "Oh, they lost so much talent." And then, they're not going to be as hungry and all this kind of stuff. But I think losing all of the talent helps you to be hungry, because that's not necessarily your championship for these starters. They weren't starting last year, a lot of them. Now, you have some carryover players, of course, your Jeremiah Smiths and whatnot. But, a lot of these players are hungry. And I think they're also just playing loose, or at least the coaches are coaching loose. Like Ryan Day is not like, I have to, now he will hold this, bookmark this for the Michigan game. We're going to change it up. We'll find out what they're made of then. But for right now, as long as I don't see an M across from me for Ohio State, give me the Buckeyes. Lay the points. I would lay 20 points in this game. It's 14.5. If I believed in Illinois at all, I'm taking them because of that hook. I don't believe in them. Give me the Buckeyes.
You just framed something that'll be a good question for me the rest of the season. Until I see differently, as long as a winged helmet is not lining up across from Ohio State, give me the Buckeyes. Yeah, they've been, since week one, they've been the quietest, best team in the country.
Yes.
I think if Texas was undefeated, or if they were 4-1 to this point and they're smacking everybody, maybe we'd be talking about Ohio State more. But Texas is kind of falling off, and Ohio State, hasn't played anybody. But I mean, they went and beat, I think Washington is a top 25 level team. They went on the road and beat them 24-6 in one of these spots where we said, Daniel, that weekend, like, hey, there's teams going on the road and losing. Florida State went on the road and lost to Virginia. And I called out that game and said, is this one of those weeks where it's a weird, like, is it 17-17 in the fourth quarter? And no, Ohio State jumped on them early. They kept them at an arm's length, beat them 24-6. Minnesota, like a top 50 level team, 42-3. Like, just in every aspect of the game, dominated them. Look, Illinois lost control of a game versus Indiana, but they bounced back versus USC. They got a good win last week against Purdue. The spread's 14.5, so it becomes, it's over 2 touchdowns. Can Illinois stay within 2 touchdowns of Ohio State? I think for that to happen, you got to find a weakness, right? You got to find, like, hey, it's all about matchups. If I'm looking at Ohio State trying to poke holes in what they've done so far this year, they've not had an elite run game. Their total rush offense only ranks 57th in the country. So I'm like, okay, can Illinois exploit that? Well, unfortunately, Illinois' rush defense is 62nd in total rush defense, 83rd in yards per carry allowed. So I don't think Illinois can exploit anything with the Ohio State offense. And I look at Ohio State's offense and say, well, their total offensive rushing numbers don't look as good because of how easy the pass game looks. And a lot of their screen game is an extension of the run game. But again, they've got so many horses at receiver. They've got, again, quietly, one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Julian Sayin. That's what it's made their total rushing numbers look not as good, because, Daniel, they've got a running back in Bo Jackson that can run. He's run the ball at 7.5 yards a carry this year. And if they need him to do that, I think he has the ability to do that. So I think Ohio State wins and covers. This is one of the 3 best teams in the country, and they might be the best. I think this is like a 31-10 game for Ohio State. I think they get up early. They're on the road. I think they shut it down. Where I think this is one of those games where they could score 45 if they needed to, and they just decide, hey, we're good today. And, Brett Bielema gets like a sad touchdown late to make it 31-10, which is still over 14.5 points. So give me the Buckeyes to win and cover. Yeah, not a winged helmet lining up. Maybe if they came out in winged helmets, I might think
that's a good strategy. They shouldn't play Delaware. So,
Daniel, we go to Columbia, Missouri, undefeated Missouri, hosting Alabama. This one's interesting, Daniel. Missouri off a bye. Can they pull this off against Alabama? And then I'm looking at the point spread and I'm like, 3. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, like 3 points on the road. I get they're off a bye. I get they're undefeated, but I think most people would say Missouri hasn't played anybody. And, look at their schedule. It's easy. And this is classic Missouri. But then Vegas throws a 3-point spread. Daniel, who do you like in this game in Columbia?
Yeah, what do they know? What's going on here? So what I said about Alabama last week was that they weren't going to have the same crowd, like it wasn't going to be the same juice that they played with against Georgia, and that was true, but they found their way to weather, any sort of a, I guess, they trailed Vanderbilt briefly, and then Vanderbilt gave them a good shot. I was honestly impressed with Vanderbilt for how they still played against Alabama last week. That being said, cream rises to the top. I'm looking at this, and Missouri, they've been quiet so far. They've played some teams that, Central Arkansas doesn't have a pulse. The Kansas win was interesting. Louisiana doesn't have a pulse. They played South Carolina in a game that a lot of people probably picked South Carolina, including myself, and then they just squeaked out kind of an ugly win, an ugly but effective win, and then, they destroyed UMass last week. There's something behind this that I can't quite quantify. Columbia, Missouri, noon, 11 o'clock local time there. Alabama going out there is a sleepy. This would be a Jefferson Pilot game all day. But you're going to go out there. You're playing a team that, Bo Perbula, dual threat quarterback, 3 rushing touchdowns this year, 12 total touchdowns, been, competent through the air. But the stories of Ahmad Hardy, 730 rushing yards already on the young season. I mean, just a stud. Georgia had success running the ball against Alabama 2 weeks ago. I think when Vanderbilt was playing, well, they were running the ball. Obviously, they had that big touchdown run. This is Ahmad Hardy's game. If he can do what those backs did against Alabama, then we're talking about an upset. Don't know if I can pull the trigger on Alabama losing to this Missouri team, because I feel like some of these yards, nothing against Ahmad Hardy. He's run against some, he's gotten some good yards, but you got to look at who they've played. They haven't faced a front seven like this. I think Alabama's starting to believe in themselves a little bit too. I don't know if they're going to, I don't necessarily see this as like a dominating win, but I don't think you're going to be everything that Missouri's going to throw at them maybe keeps this game close for a while, but I think Alabama wins by 10 to 14 points. So I'm not going to try to overanalyze this and be like, oh, because of the run game and because of Damon Wilson, he's got 3.5 sacks, he actually can get the quarterback on the ground. I do think that that's a factor in this game. Alabama can just win several different ways. I think Alabama's going to win this game. Lay the points.
I feel like you looked at my notes for a little bit of this. Missouri can run the ball. And I'm also looking at Vandy was able to run the ball. Florida State was able to run the ball on Alabama. Georgia ran for over 200 on Alabama. I think if Missouri can get an early lead in the game, then they can play keep away with Alabama. Because I think the problem with Georgia was you ran the ball so well, but you spotted them 24 points in the first half, right? And Florida State got up early and blitzed them and could kind of play keep away and win the game that way. But then I saw Vandy get up early and Alabama march back. I've seen Alabama struggle to run the ball effectively. And they've got Jay Miller back the last 2 weeks. He started to look a lot better last week. And I've seen them struggle to stop the run. And I've seen them win on the road in Athens while struggling to run the ball and while not being able to stop the run and still going to Sanford Stadium and win. I'm believing in that team. Like you said, I think they can win in more ways than one. I do think Missouri keeps it close. I don't think that Bo Perbula can beat Alabama through the air. And I think Ty Simpson can carve up any defense he wants to, and I think he does. I think Bama wins and covers. I think it's a touchdown game. So if I'm getting 3 points, lay him. I think it's like a 31-24 game. I do expect Missouri to run the ball and run it effectively. Again, I just don't think when it comes time for Bo Perbula to win the game through the air, if he can. And if they don't get an early lead, I worry about them trying to play their game and just playing to keep it close instead of playing to win the game. If they start playing to win the game, does Bo Perbula start throwing it to the other team? So I'm with you in that I think Alabama can win this game in more ways than one. And I've been impressed so far that they've not had a great run game and not have a great run defense and still winning and beating good teams the last 2 weeks. So this is kind of the last game of this 3-run stretch of they're playing teams that are off a bye, ranked SEC matchups, this one on the road. I think they go and get the job done, Daniel. I think this team clicked after I think they needed that week 1 loss to get punched in the mouth and taste their own blood. And I think they're they're looking like a classic Alabama team at this point in the season. So I think they go on the road, get it done at Columbia, 31-24. Alabama wins and covers. Let's go to Eugene, Oregon, undefeated, Indiana, undefeated. Game day is going to be at this game. Top 10 matchup. Some might say biggest game of the week this week. Probably. A lot of big games this week. Man, this is like a who are you moment in this game, right? Like Indiana, who are you really? Now we get to find out. Beating up in Illinois was one thing. Now you get Oregon, who you and I at some point this season have called Oregon the best team in the country. You've said in this episode, highest ceiling in the country. Daniel, who do you like in this game in Eugene?
Yeah, I think CBS finally getting a big stage again. They've, after losing the SEC a couple years ago, it's like people have made jokes like they gave up the SEC for this because it's usually like one good team and then just a terrible team because Big Noon takes obviously the best.
Penn State.
Yeah, true. But I mean, it was, that was a good game.
Dig, not as a compliment.
Oh yeah. So that ended up being
fine, but
yes. It ended up being great for them. But yeah, no, it was this. But you got actual top 10 matchup here for whatever reason. Yeah. Big Noon, I guess, just really wanted Ohio State, so they didn't take this game. So we got two undefeated teams. You're going to see somebody get their first loss of the season. Man, this quarterback matchup, Mendoza versus Moore. I mean, that's like there's going to be a lot of NFL eyes on this game. Like a lot of analysts and everything that are going to, a lot of scouts. Oregon, I mean, we've already talked about it. I think they're the best team in the country, or they have the highest ceiling in the country. At times this year, I've called them the best team in the country. I think that they could make that run. They're at home. It's a 7.5 point spread. I hate that line. I wish it was less than a touchdown. I think that's an easy slam dunk. I mentioned I can't get Indiana out of my head, how they blew out that Illinois team. Man, I think Indiana is going to come in here. Coach Cignetti has his teams ready to play, and I think they're going to be able to come in here and score some points. I don't think that they're going to hang with Oregon. So I think it may be close early because it kind of has to be. They start at 0. But I like Oregon to finish this game on a little bit of a run and kind of imposing their will on Indiana in the second half. They're the stronger team, both sides of the ball. Give me Oregon to lay the points. I wish it was less than a touchdown. I'm kind of counting on it to be like an 8 or 10 point game for Oregon, but I think they can get that. So give me the Ducks, Dante Moore, lay the points.
I've watched Indiana struggle, or excuse me, I've watched Indiana smoke a Nebraska team, Michigan State team last year. They win a hard-nosed game against Michigan. Then they went and got smoked by 23 on the road to Ohio State at the end of last year. Still made the playoff, but it was kind of like, okay, this is a different class of team. Daniel, I've watched Indiana smoke Illinois this year. They go last week and they won a hard-nosed game against Iowa. Now they're going on the road to Oregon with an Oregon team that's off of a bye. I think they're going to get smoked again. I've doubted this Indiana team plenty of times, but I feel pretty comfortable going up against. I just think Indiana is, honestly, Penn State's not getting smoked by these teams, so they're kind of in Penn State category of, I think Curt Cignetti's just a really good football coach, and he's a really good winner. I think he's going to win a lot of games against teams that have similar athletes to them at Indiana, and that he's going to win most of those games because he's a really good coach. And they have a really good game plan. And they've got really good players. And they play really disciplined. They play well. I just think it's going to be, when you get in these situations where you 1 or 2 games a year where you go up against your Ohio State, your Oregon, to just have different bodies than you, that you just go get smoked. So lay the points. I think Oregon can go score for them if needed. I don't think they're going to need to. I think their defense can make them one-dimensional, take the run away with the light box, and force Mendoza. Maybe he does, force him to make some tough throws to win the game. I think it's at least a 14-point game. We'll hear in Eugene. They're off a bye. It's a bad spot for Indiana. They were on the road at Iowa last week. Oregon off a bye. They're just not built to beat teams like this. So give me Oregon. Lay the points. We're in lockstep here so far. Maybe we won't be. Texas and Oklahoma. The Red River Shootout. a game I'd love to go to at some point. Josh Pate has called it his favorite game in college football. I get it, even though I haven't been. I respect it. At the Texas State Fair, in the Cotton Bowl, Daniel, the stadium sees one college football game a year, and it's this one. Let's keep that thing open for as long as possible. It looks beautiful in the sun. Beautiful uniform matchup we talked about. And Daniel, Texas is a 1.5 point favorite. Who do you like in the Red River Shootout?
Yeah, they get more time at the Texas State Fair now since it's a 3:30 kick. You don't have to rush into the game. How differently are these quarterbacks talked about? John Mateer, Arch Manning, similar completions and attempts, slightly higher completion percentage for John Mateer, but Arch Manning 11 touchdowns, John Mateer 6. Obviously, he's got some rushing touchdowns in there. They both do. 5 interceptions for Arch, 3 interceptions for John Mateer. They're not, obviously the ceiling was the roof for Arch Manning and everybody in his expectations. And Mateer we're not sure if he's going to play. There's obviously the expectation is he probably wouldn't be playing because of the surgery, but all of a sudden this week we're starting to get some smoke that he might play. I think Michael Hawkins is like a good, obviously he had to play the second half of the year last year and he played well. They improved when that happened from Jackson Arnold. So if that happens, I think that they're going to be okay. This Texas defense is probably underrated even by us, I think, just because they've really held it together. Sub last week where they, had to on the road against Florida. They were in some bad spots against Florida and, I guess Florida finally listened to everybody and ran the dang ball. So that helped for that. But I don't know if Texas is diverse enough offensively to do what they need to against this Oklahoma defense. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. If John Mateer plays, I kind of think slam dunk Oklahoma wins. I'm still leaning Oklahoma. It's a 1.5 point spread. They get the points. That's basically a pick 'em. I think Oklahoma comes in this game and they win it. They are better so far this year. They haven't had as tough of a schedule, but I've been impressed with their win against Michigan, their win against Auburn, their dominance specifically on the defensive side of the ball. I think they're going to be able to confuse Arch and to really get in his face. And if Arch had a strong running game this year, I would feel differently about this. I think that he's had to do too much with his legs. Right now he's their leading rusher, and it's only 160 yards on the year, so they're just too much by committee, and guys have been hurt. So give me Oklahoma, lay the points, or I guess they get the points, so I'll take that point.
Yeah.
Give me that 1 plus 1.5. And if Mateer plays, I mean, it's going to be just an amazing reveal if he comes out and plays in this game somehow with one hand. He just only hands the ball off and runs with it. And he never throws a pass. That'd be amazing.
Greatest sport in the world. Venables in his press conference, basically acting like he's never even heard of John Mateer once he starts getting questions about it. I love the pettiness, the secrecy, I can't give up, if I let them know that he's practicing, that gives the entertainment advantage. I love college football. This is the greatest sport in the world.
So good.
The last 2 weeks, Daniel, I've seen a team that was desperate for a win and that needed it more, just find a way to get it done. Alabama needed that win more than Georgia. Georgia was favored. I thought Georgia was the better team. I picked Georgia. Alabama wins. Florida, Billy Napier's job on the brink again. And all of a sudden they turn a switch. I thought Texas is the better team. They should win this game. Florida wins. I think Texas needs this game more. In fact, I know Texas needs this game more. Oklahoma can lose a game and be fine. Texas already has 2 losses. You're Florida. 10-2 in the SEC, you're in. Like, if you're an SEC team, you wear the logo, you're 10-2, you're in the playoff. Third loss, not guaranteed. So, Texas is back against the wall. Can they get it done? Texas's offense has been well below what people expected. They can't run the ball. And you called that out, Daniel. Texas can't run the ball. Do you know who else hasn't been able to run the ball this year? Oklahoma. But we're not talking about it because they're 5-0. In rush yards per game, Texas ranks 55th in the country. Oklahoma, 9th. Yards per carry, Texas ranks 60th. Oklahoma, 100. Explosive runs, Texas ranks 76th. Oklahoma, 104th. Success rate, running the ball, Texas 61st. Oklahoma, 56th. EPA per rush, Texas 57th. Oklahoma, 47th. You could argue Oklahoma's a worse rushing team than Texas. Both are going up against good defenses. Like, don't let Texas's record fool you into thinking their defense has been bad this year. It absolutely has not been. They held Ohio State to 14 points on the road in week 1. It took a Herculean effort from DJ Lagway last week, and honestly, a lot of turnovers from Texas. I think Arch threw 3 picks in that game. Texas's defense was fine against Florida last week. They're both going up against good defenses. Even if Mateer plays, which coaching staff do I trust to go and find a run game this week to win? Because I think whatever team figures out how to run the ball is going to win this game. I think I trust Steve Sarkisian to go and find a run game this week. Their back's against the wall. They need this game way more than Oklahoma does. I think they find a way to win this game. I also do worry about Hawkins did not look good last week. I think if Hawkins plays, I think this is like a 17th game. If Mateer plays, look, maybe Oklahoma runs away with it and gets to 30. I've seen a lot of crazy Red River games where the team that shouldn't win wins the game. But in this case, Texas is favored. And the line opened up at 3.5. And, from other people I've heard, this is with Mateer playing baked in to the line. Like, this is we expect John Mateer to play, and we open the line up at 3.5 as a Texas favorite. I don't know if that's just priors and computer models for years just loving Texas. This is a stinky line. Regardless, I think Texas needs it more. I think they win. And I think it's 1.5, so I think they cover. I think this is like a 27-24 Texas win in a classic, again, these games are normally very good. In a classic Red River game, I think Texas finds a way on Saturday. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I picked them to win the national championship. They got to win this one to get there. So we'll see. And I hope Arch looks good doing it. Maybe the Texas fan base can post some new Arch aura pictures with beating Oklahoma instead of Sam Houston. Maybe that'll be a better Arch aura. Daniel, that's it, man. That's week 7. Be sure to follow us at the Extra Point Pod on Instagram, where our good friend Ben now is posting some good stuff. You can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Karnes with a K. That'll do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob. See ya.